So good morning, everyone. Today's Thursday, June 3rd, 2021. And I am going to call the meeting of the Concord Middle School Building Committee to order. And I will call roll. Is Stephen Crane here?
I am.
Good morning, Stephen.
Good morning.
Jared Stanton?
Here.
Good morning, Matt Johnson.
Present.
Hi, Matt. Lori Hunter?
Here.
Good morning, Justin Cameron.
Morning.
Good morning, John Harris.
Here.
Hi, John. Russ Hughes. No Russ. Okay. Kate Hanley.
Good morning.
Good morning. Peter Fashalis.
Present.
Hi, Peter. Court Booth. No Court. Okay. Heather Bell.
Court's here. I see.
Oh,
Court.
he's waving.
Yeah.
Did you?
Here.
Oh, hey. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
I see you now. Heather Bout.
I'm here. Good morning.
Good morning, Frank Cannon.
Yeah.
Good morning, Frank. Chris Popov.
Morning.
Good morning, Charlie Parker.
Here.
Matt Root.
Present.
Pat Nelson.
I'm here.
And Don Goriello, I'm here. So we actually have a really good crowd. Thanks for joining everyone today. So first order of business is approval of minutes. We've got 3 sets that were sent around. We've got April 29th of this year that was amended, I want to say on the 20th, give me 1 second. Yep, revised May 20th, 2021. So let's address that one first. I had one comment on that. Under the Finance Committee meeting discussion, page 2, I want to actually attach the Finance Committee letter to this meeting note, meeting minutes. I think that might be helpful. It says that I read it to the committee, but short of having to dig up the video and listen to it, might be helpful to have that as an attachment at the end. So if we could do that, I would appreciate it. Does anyone else have any comments on, we're just doing the April 29th amended on May 20th set first? Nothing?
I guess, you know, the comment that I made last time about the gross square foot number that Dean cited versus Kristen's statement that it was 559, you know, it doesn't seem like that addresses the point that those numbers are roughly equivalent, because one is right, there's the construction cost versus the total gross square foot cost. I guess that it still leaves the impression that she's correcting him, saying his 694 number is wrong. See what I mean?
So it's a difference between construction cost and total project cost?
They're apples and oranges, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't know what to say about it, but did someone who was making this revision, I mean, how was this revised? I mean, I don't have the 2 versions side by side, but how did you incorporate that feedback?
I'm going to look to Ian for that.
Ducklin made the revision there, so I'll take a second look at it. And point taken. We just need to clarify between construction cost and total project cost. It wasn't that Kristen was correcting Dean; it's that she was putting out another number: construction versus total project cost. Right?
Yeah. Again, I don't know how to resolve it, but
can I just make a motion to approve the minutes as amended by Don and also as amended by Matt, to put in parentheses after each of those numbers, construction cost after one and total project cost after the other?
Well, it does say gross square foot unit cost, you know, where and then the gross square foot cost for construction. Those are already there. It's just that, say, you know, that some statement that, you know, this number is just distinct from the number that Dean was citing. Okay, that's all.
And where would you want that, Matt?
I would after Kristen's statement.
Okay, so on the second page, about halfway down, it says Kristen Olson of SMMA added currently.
Right, and
net,
just in parentheses, note that this number is different from the gross square footage number that Dean's cited, or note, that this is calculated on a different basis than the one, Okay, I think the point's been made here in the committee. I'm not really concerned about that people don't understand this. It's just that the minutes, I don't know. That was the feedback last time, but I don't see it.
Okay. So I have a motion from Heather to approve with the attachment of the FinCom letter for my comment and the additional information behind Kristen's comment on the second page regarding construction cost versus project cost, that it's yeah, they're different. They're calculated differently.
Yeah. So Ian, you got that right. I mean, clearly, you know it. I mean,
I have the statement that you want to put behind that. Yes.
Okay. Do I have any seconds?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll take a roll call. Stephen Crane?
Yes.
Jared Stanton?
Yes.
Matt Johnson?
Yes.
Lori Hunter?
Yes.
Justin Cameron?
Yes.
John Harris?
Yes.
Has Russ joined us? No. Kate Hanley?
Yes.
Peter Fishalis?
Yes.
Court Booth?
Yes.
Heather Bout?
Yes.
Frank Cannon?
Yes.
Chris Popoff?
Yes.
Charlie Parker?
Yes.
Matt Root?
Yes.
Pat Nelson?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Okay, so that takes care of April. Into May 6th. I had one comment. Similarly, that in this particular meeting, we read the letter from the select board, and I'd like that as an attachment as well. So in this particular set of meeting notes from May 6th, if we can share that attachment at the end, I would appreciate it. So it gives a little context so one doesn't have to dig out the audio or video to know what that letter said. Anyone else have any changes? No? Do we want to cover that one and May 20th at the same time? How do folks feel about that? I actually have two comments on the May 20th. Mary Hartman's name under approval of minutes is spelled wrong. It's written as Marty Hartman, and it should be corrected to be Mary. And then under correspondence, it says that I noted emails of support and thankfulness of the committee's continued efforts. I think we should just say from the chairs of both the select board and finance committee, because that was the context under which I shared that information. So anyone have any other changes to that? If not, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
To approve both?
Yeah.
Okay, May 6th and May 20th as amended. Okay.
Seconded as amended.
Awesome. Thank you, Heather. All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Stephen Crane?
Yes.
I saw a head nod. Jared Stanton?
Yes.
Matt Johnson?
Yep.
Lori Hunter?
Yes.
Justin Cameron?
Yes.
John Harris?
Yes.
Kate Hanley?
Yes.
Peter Fishalis?
Yes.
Court Booth?
Yes.
Heather Bout?
Yes.
Frank Cannon?
Yes.
Chris Popoff?
Yes.
Charlie Parker?
Yes.
Matt Root?
Yes.
Pat Nelson? Pat? You're muted. I see your mouth moving. She's waving. Yeah, you're a yes. And I'm a yes, don't worry. All right, great. Correspondence. We have a couple things. I want to turn it to Lori first and then Heather, if that's okay, Heather. Can I let Lori and Stephen Crane jump ahead of you?
Oh, I guess so.
Yeah, thank you.
We just wanted to update you that we've both had conversations with the school committee and select board about submitting again to MSBA. The statement of interest window is open right now. After conversations with both boards, we are moving forward knowing there's a lot of conditions around this that might not make it perfect. One, the fact that we've been turned down 4 times. And 2, that we're this far along. But we are going to submit and just keep our name in the queue. And we just want to be sure the committee knew that.
Yeah, and it's the select board did approve it. And I think everybody's clear on the level of expectation, but we felt it, at least I won't speak to the board, but I felt it was our obligation to at least try.
Yeah.
So we did, so we are.
Can I ask a question? If by some strange chance we did get approved for funding from the MSBA, what body in town makes the decision to go ahead and pursue it, given the potential expense of doing that? How does that get decided?
Stephen, it's the select board, I assume.
It would be the select board.
Yeah.
Select board. Okay, thank you.
And also, can I just add as a note, a comment from the school committee discussion, and Court, feel free to jump in or correct me, but at the school committee discussion, we approved the recommendation to move forward, but with the caveat and just the clarification that if we should get in for some reason, that does not mean automatically, to your point, Pat, does not mean automatically that we would move forward with it, but that there would have to be significant analysis done to make sure that it actually made financial sense. Because after escalation, there's a chance that maybe it wouldn't actually save us money. So our recommendation was just to, with the clarification that it wouldn't necessarily mean move forward. There'd have to be analysis before that decision was made.
So in effect, we didn't take up the question, what would happen were we approved?
Right.
So the timing on this, just so you know, typically if they're getting back on regular schedules, which I think they're trying to, normally I get notice right around the 1st of December or so. They ran a lot later this year with COVID, so it's a subject to change, but likely it would be a late 2021 notification.
Great. I just realized one thing. I guess correspondence is the right. I was just going to mention that I know with the lifting of some of the COVID restrictions, I think our intent is to still do Zoom meetings until further notice. I don't know if this is the right time to bring that up. I just wanted to comment on it because I think a few people have had that question. So for now, we're going to continue on this platform for those that are asking that question.
The governor's order has been extended till September 1st. I'm sure Stephen's going to be directing us on the town's plan and timeline.
Yeah, actually, he filed a bill that is still being debated. In fact, they were debating this subject, I think, yesterday, and other bills have been filed. Right now, they are on a deadline for June 15th. If they don't just wave the governor's legislation through. So we're watching and waiting. They know that every community is interested in having some continuation of it in some form. But if there is no action by the legislature, then it does expire on the 15th. And so they're under the gun to do this, but we are monitoring it actively, and we'll keep everybody updated on what that status of being able to do Zoom meetings under OML is.
Right. So I guess it's the right place. I've had a question or two come through, so I just wanted to make everyone aware. So stay tuned, I guess, both at a state level and a local level.
Yeah, I mean, there are options done for remote participation.
Yeah.
Under the existing law, but a quorum of the members have to be in place for others to participate remotely, and there may not be the opportunity for the public to participate remotely under the existing rules. I think that's one of the key changes. So if nothing happened, we could still technically have people participate remotely. It'd just be a little more challenging.
Right. I think you have to have a quorum in person, right?
In person, yeah.
Is my recollection from the other board I'm on. Yep. Okay, great. Well, I wasn't intending on, it just occurred to me as we were talking that I had a couple of people reach out and ask that question. So I want to be clear on what our intentions are. So, all right, Heather.
Okay, pretty simple. Excuse me, we had 3 emails to the full committee. One was about construction material recommending that we consider wood with some background behind that. And 2 were about the basketball courts, one from Mr. Caruso, who shared the official USA basketball recommendations for court dimensions, and one from the 2 varsity basketball coaches, Amy DeVasian and David Cohen, who shared similarly, and their recommendation in a nutshell is that a width of at least 46 feet is what would allow them, teams and coaches, to play and practice. But there's a lot of detail in there. Let me just note quickly, apparently the one from Amy and David might not have gone to everybody, so I just forwarded it to the committee again. If you didn't receive it for some reason, please let me know. So check it out and make sure you have it. I just wanted to make sure that everybody did actually receive all 3 of those. If you didn't receive any of them, let me know and I can forward them again.
Yeah, I didn't receive the first one. I think there's 2 versions of that public, that's MSBC list going around there that maybe some of the newer members aren't on. The one, this one from Amy, didn't, it was sent to MSBC at Concord Public.org, but I didn't receive that one.
That's a good point, Heather.
Forwarded one.
That's a good point, Matt. I was going to bring that up. Who manages that? Because I think Matt and Peter Fishalis aren't on there.
Yeah,
so when
my office does, Dawn, I thought we had fixed this. I'll double back.
It's funny because there's named the same thing. I think it may be some people that have a local copy of that list with the same name or something. It's just maybe the way.
Oh, maybe. That's interesting. So Matt, you received the one that I sent, but you didn't receive the
exactly.
initial one.
Heather's up to date, but somehow something else isn't.
Oh, that's funny.
And Heather, I didn't get it, but I just got the one you forwarded.
Yeah,
so,
this has happened before too. I think there's.
And actually, maybe it was something with the initial send. I will confess, I first noticed that because it came to me, she had copied me directly and my personal, so it actually came to a different email address than I use for all of this. And it didn't come into my school committee inbox that I use for building committee stuff. So anyway,
thankfully, I always get the placeholders and the agendas.
Right.
That's the most crucial.
Yeah. All right. We'll double check on our end.
As is the public feedback, though. So we'll make sure that everybody is getting it. If, for any public listening, if you're afraid that if you've said something in the past 2 weeks and I didn't mention it, please send it again and feel free to send to me directly, which is hbout.sc@gmail.com, just in case, and I can make sure everybody gets it.
Is this the right time? I guess it's not the right time to comment on the correspondence. I assume we'll just wait till we get to our agenda and related topics, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do it that way. And Heather, I did not get Mark Caruso's email with the regulations.
Oh, wow. Okay, I'm going to re-forward that to the whole group then also. That one,
there's definitely something funny going on.
Yeah, that one came to me through the MSBC email address, but I'm just going to forward it to the whole group again in case anybody else didn't get it. Thank you for mentioning that.
And Heather, I didn't get the other.
It's worth. I found mine in my spam folder.
Oh, interesting.
Excuse me, I didn't get mine either, Heather. I'm not talking about the Mark one, but the other one on basketball. I did not.
The other one on basketball. Did you get one that I sent this morning, or just not the original?
I didn't get well, I don't care what it is. I just want the latest version. I didn't get it.
So you haven't received something from me this morning?
No.
Oh, interesting. I'm just going to forward it to you directly right now, Charlie. Anyone else?
That would be fine. Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else who did not receive it, and I'll forward it to you directly. Okay. Charlie, I'll send it now.
Thank you.
You bet.
Great. And Lori, we'll follow up as far as making sure the right people are on the right emails and get that squared away. So sorry for any confusion. Even I'm not receiving something, so something funny is going on.
Yeah.
Okay. So that moves us forward into schematic design overview, and just want to let everyone know that we're thankful for the conversation we had at the last meeting, and that we took the comments regarding concern about open meeting law and process, and we came away from it trying to brainstorm ways to be transparent, to share information, and allow our professionals to move things forward. So as Kristen goes through this, we can certainly have further discussion about it, but we thought where we ended up as far as what she'll talk about today may be a place somewhere in the middle that, you know, can be completely transparent with information and allow the professionals to continue to get the information they need to move us forward into schematic design.
Dawn, can you speak to the source of this and the process that got it to us today? I'm not sure who's bringing this stuff forward.
So I sent a memo out to the committee. I just wanted to make sure everybody got that description, since some people are not getting the emails. Did everyone get the memo regarding possible suggestions for changing the structure?
Are you asking who got it or who didn't get it, Pat?
All right, let's see if anybody didn't get it. Okay, everybody got it, great. So Corey, your question is, how did this
how does it happen? I'm just not entirely clear on how the committee's doing its work right now.
So this was a discussion amongst Dawn and I and Lori and then Kristen. So we meet to, you know, in between meetings as we're planning for upcoming meetings. And it had come to the attention that there was concern in the community about the open meeting law. And Kristen had some suggestions regarding how we could make this a more streamlined process and more efficient. So that's how it came about. So we sent out, so I think as Kristen describes the schedule, you'll get more information about that. And then we can, and this isn't a decision that anybody has made. It's just a suggestion we've put forth to the committee for discussion.
No, that's very helpful. I just wanted to know who's got their fingerprints on it, so to speak, before we see it. I know it comes under your name and Dawn, so I was just curious who had worked on it and how it got here. Thank you.
Our fingerprints are firmly on it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, these are suggestions, I guess, but it also is quite a change to the motion.
It's a suggestion, Charlie, to discuss.
Hold on. I want to make a note that the motion suggested that focus groups would be formed. The suggestion says that we will not form focus groups. Right. So I think that's I think we ought to make a note that that's quite a change, and we will require some discussion.
Absolutely. That's why I sent the memo out.
And probably a new motion to address that.
Absolutely. That's on the agenda, I think. That's part of our discussion today, correct?
It is?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it's the third bullet under schematic design overview.
Oh, that's what that is.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was just prefacing Kristen going through what she needed to under item number 4, schematic design overview. So we can wait to have discussion when, you know, once she walks us through what is being put forward today as a possibility. So if you want to hold on that, we'll let her get through those 3 bullet points and then speak to it, maybe, if everyone's comfortable doing that. Perfect. All right, sounds like that we are. Kristen, floor is yours.
So this is what was circulated. It's an outline of meetings and the agenda items for each of those meetings. So a little bit more interweaving the background into the development of this list of meetings and dates and hosted by and location, et cetera. These all align 100% with the content of the focus groups that were presented in our last meeting. Instead of having multiple focus groups, though, it brings everyone together on the same page in one meeting, in one regular meeting that is every 3 weeks, that is a CMSBC meeting. So what we were finding is that even after the group had reached consensus and made the motion on the focus groups, we had asked that folks let us know who wanted to be on which focus group and so on. And we weren't getting, we got very few people who actually self-nominated for which focus group. So we didn't hear back a lot. And then we did hear, though, that there was continued concern from the community on these meetings. So if we collect all of the same information back into the building committee meetings format, then everyone in the building committee who has as the decision makers gets all the same information at the same time and can make decisions in the meeting or in the next meeting and can actively give us their comprehensive concerns. In the focus group format, again, it would have been primarily around the design team members pulling information from people very specific people, such as the water department and so on, to get information about design development, and then synthesizing that into a recommendation for the building committee. And that, in fact, was drawing the schedule out. It was also packing a lot of meetings in for everyone. And then we were also realizing that with summer vacations, it was going to be a little bit difficult to every week get large groups of people together on one date at one time. So in this format that we were recommending as an alternative, not only, again, does the whole building committee get the same information at the same time, but the design team members would just be able to call a water department member and ask, what is the size of your water line? And this is what we're thinking. And then bring that information back, synthesize how it relates to the project to the building committee. That will give us so much more flexibility to, again, collect the technical information and then formulate it into a takeaway, into a recommendation, into how it influences the design, and bring that to the building committee for information and for comment. So we just felt that this was going to be a better format for the summer and for the whole community involvement. We'll always have public comment. These will be posted. The agendas can be set from now all the way through October. So everyone can just be aware of when these meetings are, their whole, for the next 5 months. So we did see a lot of advantages in this after, again, we heard more concern about how the focus group format might actually play out. So
what is the nature of the concern and who was expressing it? I guess I didn't see correspondence on this point.
My understanding was that some of it came up in the subsequent school committee meeting, but also just what was in the meeting. And maybe though we arrived at the focus groups, there was a lot of even getting there concern that people had getting to that point. So, but I do believe Dawn, Lori, and Pat, I'm not sure what other sources or if there were any, but I do recall it was a subsequent school committee meeting that had something, some part of the concern.
Yeah, I mean, yes, that is correct. Some certainly feedback there. Just and then in really looking at how the process would work, since it's my office that posts, legitimately figuring how you would post a focus group without a subcommittee or a committee designation to it, because we wouldn't necessarily have a quorum to work with. It was feeling like a square peg in a round hole. And I brought that to Pat and Dawn and Kristen to process and strategize, because I think we're all really committed to this being as transparent as possible. And I didn't want us to somehow inadvertently misstep on that. So that's part of the recommendation, is trying to be sure we're compliant with the law.
And Matt, I'll add that in reconsidering the whole process and thinking about the complexities of our architects and OPM getting all of the technical and operational information they need from the town departments, it didn't sit right with me, which is why this is a suggestion, and it's come from the chair as its suggestion, that this would be a process which would get us to our goal of schematic design more quickly, more efficiently, more effectively, and not sacrifice transparency, because we would be hearing every 3 weeks and any comments that came up in those building committee meetings would be incorporated into the next building committee meeting report from the professionals. And I have to say, I'm also somewhat influenced by having been on the Willard Building Committee, which was pretty much how that worked. There weren't a lot of committee meetings that were discussing the size of pipes and groundwater or whatever, but we were getting information when we came back together as a full committee.
Pat, this is Charlie. I think this first bullet that you have here does make sense. I think the right thing to do is for the professionals to collect the data from the town on pipe sizes and pressures and what have you, and deal with that. I don't think the committee needs to do that. So I think that's good. I wonder though, whether there's a redundancy in this comment here about experts. You're really talking about town staff with expertise, I guess. You're not talking about some other group of experts.
No. I'm sorry. Perhaps it was a misnomer. It's definitely whoever it is that the architects and the professionals need to get information from, which, as I understand it from Kristen, is the town staff. But I don't know. Maybe you have to talk to National Grid. I don't know. But
well, I think we get the idea, and I think it makes a lot of sense. So regardless as to whether we have focus groups or not, the professionals in the design team should do this work with the town and get that done. I think that's exactly right. And they don't need members of the committee participating in that process. At least that's my take. That's what I'm hearing here, and I think that makes good sense.
Is it not true that this has been happening throughout the project? This is not new, right? I mean, this is how it's been done from day one. Is we reach out to the people who have the answers. Fire department as a case in point. Those conversations started over a year ago. So that's why this is curious to me. This whole process of putting the focus groups on and taking them off again.
Say more about why it's curious to you, because I need to understand what.
Well, because we spent 2.5 hours last time
I know
debating the merits of this, and what I'm trying to convey is if the example is town experts, I'm trying to point out that nothing prior to last meeting's debate or this precluded the professionals from having these communications. So we're simply, in effect, saying they will continue.
Well,
is that right?
True, but when we discussed this, we talked about the focus groups as specifically as I understand it, a process of the schematic design phase. And that in the schematic design phase, you're putting together a lot of technical information.
Right.
So did you need to have committee involvement in subcommittees? Is really where it started. Did you need to have committee involvement in those meetings? Or did you need to sort of let the professionals go off and do their thing and then bring everything back to the full committee?
So in effect, at the last, would I be accurate, Pat, in saying at the last meeting, we de facto relegated our 4 subcommittees to inactivity, and now we are doing the same with the focus groups?
Yeah, I think, yeah.
My understanding here is that because there was a lot of debate last time, I mean, I think our leadership team brought us a recommendation last time that they thought was going to be how we moved forward, because it was kind of the typical way they move forward. And we questioned it a lot. We as a committee debated it for a long time, to your point, Court. And based on that, they're bringing us a different recommendation. So to me, this is a response to our last discussion, because people had concerns. They're bringing us a new way of doing this, which is, to your point again, more similar to the way we were working before, but laid out so that everybody understands it, because there will be more technical information collection during the schematic design. Is that accurate, Pat?
I think so, yeah. Wait
a second though. We did have discussion, but this was really primarily Kristen's proposal that we tried to understand. And I think, you know, I, for one, spent a lot of time in that meeting asking clarifying questions of Kristen and supporting the answers. Are you going to be the chair of each focus group? Yes. Do you want a core of people involved in each focus group? Yes. You know, will these focus groups create the recommendations for the committee? Yes. So I'm not sure this was a debate process that we had. We had a discussion, but by and large, we pursued Kristen's recommendations. So I think that the question is still a good one. What happened? Kristen made a proposal. We accepted it with one exception, which was the fact that the subcommittees would review the recommendations before submission to the larger committee. And then a week later or days later, we get a notification that that's off and we're not doing that anymore. So I guess I was—
you got it.
Wait,
Charlie,
let me finish up. This also happened with Tim Holt last year. In December, we spent a lot of time in meetings discussing how we would proceed. We laid out focus group meetings, we laid out timelines and so forth, only to the very next day to have all of that basically put on hold. So I'm simply saying that you know, things seem to do happen here. We put energy into these things, and I think we did the right thing last week. Whether the result was a good one really depends on whether it was in support of what Kristen wanted. I thought it was. And they are the architects, and we're trying to invest the architects with the power and the authority and the capability to do what they need to do. So I was very surprised to receive this mail.
Thank you, Charlie. I just want to reiterate, it's a suggestion. It's not a this is off the table thing. And as often happens when, in my world, when we're trying to solve a problem or considering a process, we may come to a conclusion and then there's further thought on it. And we don't necessarily ignore that further thought. And I don't want to speak for Kristen. I think she can speak for the professionals. But what I heard sort of in retrospect, once the professionals attempted to put together a schedule that would make sense for getting the work done, integrating numerous focus groups or subcommittee meetings or whatever presented more difficulties, especially since we're looking out over the summer to get this done. So, you know, my feeling was it was logical to go back and take a second look at it. That I didn't want to just say, well, we discussed this and this is what we came up with. Now we have some new perspective on it. But I appreciate that, yes, we spent a lot of time talking about it. This group processes very well. We do a great job of considering all the, you know, the ins and outs of things. But we brought it back to see if there wasn't a better way to do it.
My question really relates to, you know, the folks that need to be consulted during schematic design. So I think that, yeah, there isn't any debate about meeting with the town staff, you know, in various technical departments to deal with technical details with the design. But when I look at items like the educational programming, that I assume would involve meeting with teachers or with groups of students. And I thought, in fact, that those kinds of meetings were considered in the scope of the schematic design, and perhaps I'm mistaken there. If indeed, you know, the meetings are strictly with town staff to clarify technical details, it seems like there's no need for a focus group, and I'm really confused why we even had a debate last time about that issue. And so I guess really indeed, you know, what is expected to be the group of folks at different times that are involved, and if they're members of not necessarily the general public, but folks that are just, you know, stakeholders of other kinds, users of the building, for example, then, you know, it does seem like there should be more of a public process around those particular interactions. And that would be the one open concern I'd have, and other than just understanding why it was we had to have a whole big discussion last time, if indeed it's not included in the scope.
If I may add a little bit more about how focus groups have been practiced on our other projects. It doesn't preclude us from having a one-on-one discussion with technical town staff, correct, and to everyone who's noted that, that is correct. But the focus groups did in fact bring multiple technical town staff together in a site type discussion. So we would, in a focus group, have said, let's invite fire department, police department, permitting, all of those who have something to do with the site into one meeting. And then we have one conversation with everyone at the same time about impervious and everything. But that's, and so that's the thing, is that's why, you know, focus groups were, that being said, proposed. That being said, it's also entirely possible to achieve the same thing by gathering the information. Sometimes, you know, the police certainly and fire departments sometimes prefer to not be in those larger meetings because they have a lot to do naturally. But we, so breaking it apart into just getting fire department feedback and police department feedback, and it just takes, you know, it does. Then you no longer need the focus group when everyone's not going to come together as one. And again, we would gather the same information. It just wouldn't be in that larger formal posted meeting. It would instead be gathered and then brought to the building committee. So, so it's really, you know, the same end result occurs. It's just a lot less of a, you know, I think what Lori started to mention, I recall now, is one of the concerns that came up as well, is how do you make public and post and have a chair when you don't have a chair? Because these do need to be run by SMMA. And in other communities, the focus groups were not posted and were not public. And so that's, I think, what some of the mechanics that we learned about after we took away the process from the last meeting is looking into how do you post this in the agenda and who runs it? And, you know, it was somewhat that making public. And that's why we turned back to the building committee, which is a formal entity with public posted meetings and a chair and so on, co-chairs, if that's helpful.
So that's another way of saying that there aren't meetings with other general stakeholders, that this is meetings strictly with folks that are technical experts, you know, regulatory authorities, town staff, utilities firms, you know, that to deal with the technical issues of schematic design.
Correct.
In which case, I mean, I think bringing them together as much as you can to reduce the number of meetings is wonderful. I think that I was imagining, just again, looking at, you know, educational programming questionnaires and meetings, that would involve other stakeholders. And again, you know, where with those groups, I don't know, being users and or, you know, advocating for different aspects of the design, that there should be more of a public process around those, but it sounds like that's not in scope.
Correct. The educational programming meetings are Phil Poinelli basically going in and meeting with the art teacher and saying, cabinets, this is what a typical art room layout is, and things like that. So those typically do throughout design occur as very small engagements with very specific teacher groups.
Kristen, do you think you could go through this document just quickly so we see the big picture you've sketched out, and then we can actually consider the options here and settle in on the process?
Sure. So because as soon as we received the authorization to start with schematic design, understanding that the teachers and staff would be breaking for the summer, we have developed over the last couple of years or year or two, these questionnaires that go over things like TUSIGs and number of you know, criteria for spaces. And And so we distributed those to the teachers to get that initial feedback on how they teach in their classrooms and so on immediately. So that's already been underway. And Phil is going to be wrapping that up very soon as the teachers again are launching in the summer soon. And we'll form a takeaways document that summarizes everything that was learned from that are key takeaways for design. And that will be shared with the building committee so that you have the information that comes out of those. And because those meetings do in fact influence what you'll be seeing in some of the floor plan development. And so we'll be opening the floor to questions and comments in that background. Then, so that's first out of the gate. In the meanwhile, our design partners with Ewing Cole and our site design team and Matt Rice and Phil are working on updates to the floor plans based on the vote, again, going to the 420 seats and going to the gym adaptation and so on. So there have been a lot of work done on the floor plans already so that we can prepare for this first June 24th meeting that begins to talk about, again, what we've learned from the educational programming and then shows plan refinements and some visioning that's going to set the committee up for future decisions on interior and exterior design, massing, and materials. In July, we're going to take it a little bit more into the site and the exterior. The first one is getting that preliminary look at the floor plan updates, then go into site and exterior. Again, on site, more updates on parking and pickup and drop off, impervious area updates based on all the floor plan updates. And again, these are made to build on each other so that we can keep advancing toward that estimating deadline. Then in late July, we'll be coming back because we'll have some of those massing and floor plan and material refinements with updates on sustainability and MEP. So between now and that date, we'd be meeting with some of the facility maintenance staff to say, this is what we're thinking about fan power boxes and things like that. Do you have the maintenance capability? And gathering some of that information to inform our next MEP and sustainability meeting. In August, we come back to any comments that we gathered from the July meeting on the building floor plans and exterior to talk more about any refinements to the site and exterior. We're proposing mid-August a sustainable design charrette. These are done with every project and these are community-wide. These are public meetings, so this would presumably happen in the evening in that week, similar to any of our public forums. And those kind of go into what is the community aspiration for sustainability, but of course informed by everything that's been happening with the building committee. With that information now going more into the building, we've been doing a lot up until this point on the materials and massing and the floor plans, and we go into the interior development and any response to exterior comments, more design refinement, and then a kind of 6 weeks later, an MEP, revisiting the MEP scope with any question based on questions and comments heard, more information on life cycle cost analysis. Again, every time we come back kind of drilling down more and picking up responses from the prior. And then in September, also then preliminary information on the furniture and technology budget, again with SMMA having met with the IT department to see what do the schools have for marker boards, whiteboards, scanners, and all of that, and putting that into a technology budget. And then that leads up to the first week of October where we have our pricing submission. So over the course of those 4 months, we'll just have been working iteratively through all of those pieces to come up with a set of documents that we went over in our last meeting for formal estimating. And that goes out to the estimators. And then we have some of those micro milestones on, we get the estimates back at 3 weeks later. Concurrently, you would have also the same estimating package and would be able to make comments and review it as well. And then getting into November when we would approve the costs and circulate that for warrant and town meeting and town vote at the end of the year. So that's the quick.
Kristen, do you think it's likely that the full committee would charge the subcommittees to meet perhaps in between these big meetings, especially on some of the design and sustainability topics?
Yeah, so we don't have anything like that scheduled because we're hoping that everybody will speak openly and freely and comment together so that everyone can hear comment in these major meetings. But we absolutely, I can see that after our MEP and sustainability update, I could see that the building committee may ask the subcommittee to take a deeper dive the following week with the same material, because I believe that's how it had been organized in the past, where the building committee would ask the kind of specialty subcommittee to take a look and provide comment, and then we could feed that back into our next MEP and sustainability meeting with those comments. And Lori, to that end, I think that there may be those causes for a deeper dive, but I really, you know, SMA is an integrated firm and it works really well for us because, you know, engineering and architecture and all of that happens together. And so really having the design subcommittee members and the sustainability subcommittees members really speak critically and openly to us in the building committee meetings is helpful because we're evolving the design as a whole. So, you know, if the design subcommittee were to say we want more windows, but the sustainability subcommittee says that's more heat loss, you know, it's actually really helpful to have that dialogue together because there can be conflicts between the two.
Ian, did you?
Yeah, I just wanted to tie up a few thoughts here. So I think just to go back and look at the way that this was presented last week versus this week, you know, what happened here is that there was a proposal put forth that had, you know, the focus groups in mind, and then moving things up to the committee level. And when after the meeting and the discussion and everything, it was good discussion. It was a robust discussion, but just the logistics of doing that weren't really feasible. And trying to you know, have the public process and involved in the focus groups. I mean, the purpose of the focus groups is just to gather information to inform the design. And so that's really what the architect is tasked with. And you know, it's at the end of the day, they're the ones responsible for putting together the design. They're the ones that are responsible for meeting the program of the stakeholders and making sure that it's within the budget, that the quality's there, that the schedule's there. And so, you know, it's just allowing them to do that and to still bubble things up to the committee level for decision making. So I don't think, you know, I don't think anything's changed in that, you know, they're going out and they're speaking with the teachers, they're speaking with the different groups within the town and gathering information to inform design so that you can take that back to the committee level, present, and really get the feedback that you need to advance the design step by step here. So I think that was kind of the iteration and the direction that we went in from last meeting to this meeting. And we were involved, obviously. I met with Kristen and went through this plan as well before the meeting. It's something that we also had our hand in this too. So.
Heather? Nice, quick question. Thank you. It's just a question. First of all, thank you for doing this, because I know it seems, my understanding is this is in response to kind of our response to your initial recommendation, Kristen. And I realize, I see as I'm hearing all of this, that the way we came back and said we needed to all be public made it less realistic. I just want to make sure, compared to your initial recommendation, Kristen, of the focus groups, the way kind of you typically do them, does this still give you the flexibility, information, timing, and everything that you need to process this schematic design efficiently?
Yeah, I think the biggest benefit of it is, again, that we are with you all who are the holders of the decisions and the scope and the budget at, you know, for the critical junctures of decision. You know, the focus groups are really, they're really just that sleeves rolled up kind of meeting. And so they're not necessary to have with a large calling, as we've mentioned. It's just been something that some communities have wanted, and we've seen it work well. But I think based on, again, the feedback from you all and wanting these to be wanting the public process and the decisions to be really firmly held by the building committee, I think this is actually a better approach, probably.
Okay, great, thank you. And I'll just, no, go ahead. Everybody, others can ask questions.
Yeah, I think this is, I don't really have a problem with this. I would say though that we're looking at very few meetings where we're going to be in a position to comment on important things. And I think that it would be very important for us to get the materials well in advance of these meetings so that we can properly review them and digest them. We get the stuff the day before, you know, for example, the meeting on the MEP and sustainability, and kind of wait around for that material and then try to rush through a study of it with little notice is going to make us less than effective, you know, on the day of the meeting. So I guess one thing that I would request is that we get adequate lead time to properly review these things so we can make substantive comments in these meetings.
I think this format, Charlie, will actually help us with that, because when we have a meeting with, say, the sustainability subcommittee the week prior and then have one with the building committee, it's really hard for us in that, you know, if they're 5 to 7 days to turn around a sustainability subcommittee comment into building committee materials and get it to the building committee with advance notice. So these meetings spaced and scheduled as they are will actually help us prepare and make sure that you have that in advance.
I was only referring to the building committee meetings.
Right. Oh, yes, but I'm
the building committee meeting that is scheduled on, let's say, as MEP and sustainability, that we have enough lead time to properly review those materials as an entire building committee, so that we could be productive and not, you know, trying to catch up at the last minute with a lot of complicated stuff. So these things will take a while to analyze, and, you know, we're going to need some time. Is that okay?
Oh,
I agree, Charlie. That there will be a lot of information for us to take in. So as someone who has to get information to committees ahead of time, I'm sensitive to what it takes to do it, but I agree as a committee member that we need the appropriate time to review it. So
I think that was one of the benefits. The predictability of the schedule will really help that to happen, I think, in a way we've been struggling to accomplish. I think Charlie's right.
And I think the subcommittee meetings then will patch in and deal with issues that are surfaced, as you say, in those larger meetings. But I think that means that the larger meeting needs to be a success in terms of substantive review. Yeah, so I'm okay with this.
In case Matt, you guys can't see the hands, Chris and Matt both have their hands, their digital hands raised.
Matt, you've been waiting a while. Go ahead.
No, thank you. I guess my only comment is I certainly agree with everything that Ian said, and full-heartedly support that we want to empower the design team. My only comment, I think we've you know, through this process, the charter has dropped off, and I want to make sure that the design team has clear guidance on kind of what we as a full committee see as the goals of the project. I mean, I know the sustainability subcommittee has issued some guidance, and there's the educational plan, but I think we did at some point lose the kind of charter. And as long as you've got clear guidance, Kristen, great. I just don't want you to get too far down the road and then in one of these meetings us be out of alignment.
Chris?
Couple thoughts. When we fine tune our schedule, I think if we keep to making all of the review at the building committee level, we need to allocate more time per meeting. So we might think of through the summer of longer meetings and blocking that off in our schedules. We might also consider adding some evening meetings that might be more helpful for the community and community comment. So something to think about, even if we do go back to subcommittee meetings. I think our main building committee meetings are.
You're muted, Chris. You got muted.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, that's all I had to say. Just allocating more time per main meeting so we can thoroughly review everything Kristen and the design team puts together, from amassing all the technical information and fine-tuning floor plans, exterior designs, and so forth. I can envision meetings, if we start at 7:30, going to 10 or 10:30 easily each time.
I would agree. I think knowing that we have the time to really go through it would be important. And I like the idea of a few evening meetings, if we could maybe identify things that might be of particular interest to the public.
I could imagine the MEP and sustainability definitely rising to the top of some of those, and maybe those we consider an evening meeting, and to allow for a different audience, participation. To someone's point, a public member in the last month or two, saying that this is a difficult time. And as a parent who's trying to get a child out the door to school, I can appreciate that this is, but so we'll take that under consideration, and maybe Kristen, we can work together to adjust a couple different meetings to the evening if needed, or we'll have to look at that.
Or maybe can we think about adding a meeting here and there in the evening, so that we're not taking away from our 3-hour morning discussions, if that's what we decide that we need to do.
I have one other quick comment here. I think, again, with these bigger committee meetings, the CMSBC meeting as a whole, it's going to be important for us to understand how you got to the answer or to the recommendation that you've arrived at. So the evaluation of trade-offs and the decisions that were made in coming up with your recommendation, we're going to want to see that stuff, because we're going to want to understand how you got to where you got. It's sort of like the workup in a math exam. We want to see the work. We want to see how you got there. And I think that would be very, very helpful to us as we kind of sync up in these very short periods of time on very complex topics, to see the analytic process that you went through to the extent that we can.
As a suggestion, Kristen, the meetings that occur with whomever, the water department, I assume you'll do meeting notes for that. And as a suggestion, it may be helpful to share that with the committee and or post it somehow. Well, the information that's not sensitive. I'll caveat all of this with anything, security related or sensitive information would not be included in this as far as cameras and that type of thing. But to share that information as well. So there's backup so that one can follow along in that meeting, the water department meeting, for example, to know what where the connection needs to be made, where it comes into the building, where the meter is, information that you're gathering might be helpful to others who want to see sort of how things are arrived at. I'm not saying that's always going to take us through the backup, to get us to the arrival point, but at least it's information that, the committee has.
Absolutely.
Can I weigh in again quickly?
Yes, Heather.
I'll first say I agree with all of the other comments, so I appreciate all of those. And I just wanted to kind of get back to your initial recommendation and question, which is which way do we go, right? Do we stick with the original plan or do we go with this one? Based on the answers that I've heard, I would weigh in that this makes sense. Obviously I was a fan of the initial recommendation that Kristen brought to us, but thought that it could be more public based on the feedback that trying to make all of those public meetings and everything doesn't make sense. I think that this does make sense. And I think that's the feedback that you're looking from everybody here. I'm not saying that it does, but the feedback, whether we agree or not. And this is not to end discussion, but in order to focus the discussion, would it be helpful if I make a motion now to approve this as this recommendation in place of our last voted plan? Or is that later in the meeting?
I guess it's all under item 4. We sort of skipped ahead to the schedule to put it in context.
Okay.
But I'm happy to entertain a motion
later then. And again, I wasn't trying to cut off other comments, only kind of focus, make a motion and then have more discussion specifically on, are we proceeding with this or our last plan?
Yeah, my only question is, does this motion just override the previous one? I guess logistically, that's not clear to me how that works, but.
I think the motion could be worded as such.
Okay.
To follow.
I mean, I'm happy to entertain a motion. This was our only vote today, was about this schedule in particular. So.
And I'll just make that motion. I'll move that we proceed with the schematic design plan as presented by Kristen today, instead of the plan that we voted using focus groups in our last meeting.
Okay, we have a motion. Any seconds?
8 seconds.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Further discussion.
I wonder if I could put a question to the group. The subcommittees are where some of the really lengthy analysis has happened in the past. And I understand that subcommittees aren't as active in the analytical work during schematic, if I'm correct, but I don't think the role disappears. So I need some clarity on the last bullet that reads, the school building committee will request more in-depth review and follow-up if needed by the appropriate subcommittee, which will meet with the appropriate project professionals prior to the next SBC meeting. We've got, I think, at least 4 subcommittees, perhaps 5. Do these subcommittees now require permission to meet by a vote of the entire committee? Mechanically, how does that actually work now? How do we interpret that bullet and the capacity of a subcommittee to come together? I think we have finance, we have a leadership group, we have a communication group, we have, of course, design on which I serve, we have a sustainability group. Just curious on the practical mechanics of this.
The subcommittees meet to further the work of the full committee, right? I'm asking genuine questions. And I'm wondering, when the design subcommittee was meeting regularly and the communications committee was meeting regularly, and the sustainability committee were meeting regularly, it was to further the work of the committee, right, Court?
No, I would put it a little differently myself. I would say each subcommittee had a specific area on which they were to concentrate. That was the purpose of the subcommittees, was that narrower purpose for deeper analysis. It was my understanding. And I think that's actually how it worked.
So maybe, Kristen, you're the expert here, but my understanding is that subcommittees, it's closer to Pat's, is that and maybe it's both. They're furthering the work of the large committee by doing that extra detailed analysis that you say, Court. But I guess at a high level, I see subcommittees as their existence is to further the work of the committee overall. They are for the purpose of the committee moving forward, not for the purpose of themselves, right? So I feel like it makes sense that they would be called to look at something by the overall committee. I don't think that's relegating them to anything during schematic design. I think it's that we will only be asked to do things when we're needed. We, the subcommittees, are needed.
Okay, well, that's what I'm asking. What you're saying is we wait for the school building committee to direct a subcommittee to convene before it does so. The earlier statement that our purpose is to be directed at the project, I think that brings us back to Matt's reminder that we have a charter here. And I think anything that anybody does should be in service to this project. That's kind of de facto so, I hope. But I'm asking the practical question, do the subcommittees need a vote of this committee to convene? It's a very specific question.
I may not be as clear on sort of the rules of order, but I don't think it's requiring a vote for the subcommittees to meet. It's if we get information during schematics that the building committee says we need to dig deeper in this, and it's about sustainability, we would ask the sustainability committee to maybe meet and to consider it. Or if there's something that comes up that we particularly needs to be communicated out to the community, we would ask the communications committee to consider it. When you say a vote, it makes it sound more prescriptive than I.
Yeah, I'm only asking it that way to seek clarity, because I mean, here we are unraveling last week. I don't want to have to unravel this week.
Yeah, I know. I don't either.
So I just want to understand the actual implications for the real subgroups that have been functioning through this project.
It's a good point. Previously, so basically, Pat, if the committee would ask the subcommittee to go do something, but it doesn't have to be a formal vote to do it. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, I think what we want to avoid, I would think, is that we don't want subcommittees going off and doing things that aren't aligned with what the full committee wants to see happening, just to keep things from getting messy.
Makes sense.
I think that goes without saying, does it not?
I would hope so, but I think, that's just.
Is this intended to address that concern?
No.
Well, that's reassuring. Okay.
Yeah. No, I just, no.
Okay. Thank you.
I think to date, at least, it's been operated kind of at the discretion of the chair, right? Calling those subcommittee meetings based on guidance from the executive team and the broader committee. And I feel like we can continue. That seems to have been working fine, and we can continue under that method.
I was
Dawn, you're muted.
Sorry, I'm trying to stay muted because they're literally blowing leaves outside my window. I was going to make that point earlier, Matt, that we haven't to date taken any votes as far as, but it's been at the, it's been, oh, this needs to be studied. So, why don't you, as the chair of the sustainability subcommittee, call a meeting and dive into it and then report back. So,
right. And then
as far as
sorry. Yeah. And just the subcommittee is guided by those guidelines that Kristen just had up.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and any member of a subcommittee at a regular meeting of the larger building committee can make a suggestion that, gee, we think we need to fill this particular hole. We'd
Absolutely.
like to call a meeting of the subcommittee. What do you all think? And if someone says, well, we think we have the answers right here, here they are. If that isn't satisfactory, then I think the support would be there to go off and and do that extra work. But I think members of these subcommittees are going to say in the larger meetings that, gee, we need to take another deep dive on this. Is this okay? Certainly would be the way I would think it would happen.
Sorry, Chris, you had your hand up and I jumped in.
You pretty much covered what I was going to cover, which is things come up in the main meeting, and I can anticipate, given how ambitious the schedule is and how much work we have ahead of us, the main committee would say, for example, we need to have this design subcommittee look more thoroughly in this as we move through our main committee agenda. Similarly, when we get into numbers, finance committee, take a look at these numbers and these estimates and make sure we are on track when we get to that phase of schematic design, getting ready to present this to town meeting. So I think it all reflects what people have been saying. Thanks.
Just for the sake of time, should we go to the other? I don't know if we're back on the motion or still.
Yeah, we still have a motion. I appreciate the few minutes you spent on that. The clarity was necessary for me. Perhaps it was helpful to others.
Good. Do we have anything else? If not, I'll call for a vote on the motion. No one? Okay. In that case, Stephen Crane, how do you vote?
Yes.
Jared?
Jared's coming. He's
yes.
nodding his head.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw. Was that a yes, Jared? I saw you nodding your head. Okay.
Yes.
Matt Johnson.
Yes.
Thank you. Lori?
Yes.
Justin?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
I assume Russ still isn't with us.
Russ
Kate?
won't be here today, Don.
Okay, no, that's fine. I didn't want him to have joined and me not notice, so I didn't want him to feel left out as we were voting. Kate?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Court?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Frank? Did we lose Frank? I saw him earlier.
Frank, you're muted.
Oh, he's there.
Frank,
You're muted, Frank.
Yeah.
We got to wave. Chris?
Yes.
Papa? Charlie?
Yes.
Matt Root?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Okay, great. So we have the process established. We have the schedule ahead of us. Everyone put it into your calendars. I'll ask Declan to please put placeholders for us. I see Ian nodding. That would be excellent so that it's in everyone's calendars, and any added meetings will just go on top of those, but that'll be the basic structure. And Kristen, do you want to run through the other 2 bullet points on the agenda under schematic design overview?
Yes, I think the other major question that came up in the last meeting was if we could confirm what square footage we're looking at and what the cost is based on all of our prior cost assumptions as informed by the vote that was taken on the scope. So we did send some materials out in advance of draft, and so I will review those in slides right now. Let's see. All right. So I did capture the vote language that I pulled this directly from the minutes, just as a, to kick us off. And so we did remove the dedicated square footage for makerspace and alternate PE space. And you saw that in space summary is zeroed out. And then revising the size of the gym to accommodate 74-foot practice courts. And that's in the long dimension of the practice cross courts, and then within the width required by a single MIAA court. And that we'll dive into that a little bit more in a moment. Then revise auditorium size to 420 seats, and then review the building design to seek opportunities to simplify and lower total project costs. So this last bullet is going to be an iterative process over the course of schematic design, but and really all of these are, but we do have a little bit more development on those square footage updates. So in the materials that were circulated in advance, we had our conservative initial estimate of the gym space at 10,528 net square feet and 12 net square feet per auditorium seat, and what that total was. What I've added since the materials that were circulated is this, this alternative version, and it lies between the two that were in the draft materials. So what we did is we did a lot of work on the run out, sidelines, and all of those dimensions, because though the vote language does give you a firm MIAA main court dimension and then the 74-foot long direction of the cross courts, the areas where these can differ and change is in the runouts and the sideline dimensions, and then the cross court widths. And so I think in our last meetings, we had been talking about the complexity of developing that, and that there are more meetings required to really zero in on exactly those dimensions. But we have the framework that puts us in this range of anywhere between 10,528 net square feet to as low as 9,180. Now, where we fall exactly in the end, again, relies on us getting final buy-in on runouts and so on. And so we, just as discussed in our last topic, are looking at the emails from Mark Caruso. We're looking at the information provided by Charlie Parker, because he's been really diving into the scope of the basketball courts and the dimensions. And then we also are following up with Lori to reach out to her athletics department, because again, the MIAA is a standard developed for school basketball. So it's really, you know, school department that would normally have the final say and the authority around how they want to operate a gymnasium in those dimensions. So we're working to bring those three sources of information together to really refine that. So what we'd like to present at the community meeting is that, because I think this was all going toward understanding what is going to be put in front of the community at our next public forum. And so what we'd like to present is that the building square foot range that we are looking at right now as a starting point is somewhere between 144.5 thousand gross square feet and say 147. And that the project cost is also between 101 million and 102.5 million. So that's what we'd like to put out there and again, convey to the community. This is a development phase over 5 months, working through all the details to really hone in on that. And that these cost assumptions even are based on all of the information we had during feasibility, and not, you know, subject to change based on how the material selection and all of that goes throughout the schematic design process, and market conditions, which we're all keeping an eye on as closely as possible. But that's kind of the summary slide on the status of our square footage and our cost. And I know that many of you are really wanting to pin this down now, and believe me, I wish I could, but there's just so much massaging and work to do to lay out the building, including the support spaces, chases, mechanical, you know, back of house space and everything. So there's so many things that go into really locking in that square footage, which is why it's only done at the end of schematic design. So we will be keeping you updated on any changes that we make to this, and we'll be giving you solid background information on why the recommendation is what it is, and then seeking your comment and input on that. But I do think right now, as we kick off schematic design, we would really like to keep it at this range. So I had sent some of the backup material on that. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. And so, for example, the cost, we had been using this first column was what we had presented when we had just been working with the ed plan summary pre-community elements. So that was when we were at this square footage. Since that time, I added the square footage for our conservative, again, changing none of the other numbers. So all of the multipliers are the same, the percentage, the multipliers, the cost per square foot of the building. And then again, construction, demolition, hazmat, those are unchanging right now based on the information we have. So So I've added those in to show the range of the three square footages that are on the prior slide. And again, this just breaks down all of the very detailed items on the 102.5 to 101 project cost range, but keeping everything unchanged other than that square footage that we're going to continue to refine. And then we're going to be having, you know, those smaller discussions with the athletics director, I hope, and with Charlie and so on. But here's one of the pieces of information in your backup that talked about the assumptions that go into that very aggressive 9-180. It's assuming a 90 by 102 in overall dimension of the gym space. And then the SMMA assumption of the 9776 is a 94 to 104. So I did this very general schematic because I wanted to make sure everybody understands just what the variables are graphically. We had been drawing all the versions of the gym as we were going along, but really until we get some of these firm answers on sideline dimensions and so on, we can't really lock in a formal floor plan. But one thing I can talk about with this schematic is that the blue is your MIA court size. We all agree, and there's consensus on the 84 by 50 foot MIAA court size. There's 100% agreement on the 74 foot cross court long length. Some of the variables that come into play is that there is a cross court dimension can go as low as 42 feet, which we've heard in the backup from Charlie, and also acknowledged by CCYB that the range is between 42 and 50 width. And what influences that width has something to do with, again, what was reviewed in some of the prior meetings. Mark Caruso noted that it's that distance for the 3-point line. If you're on the 42 end of the range, then you have that 1 foot between the 3-point line and being out of bounds. CCYB is asking for 46 so that you have 3 feet, which again gives that player a little bit more room to maneuver. But we'll be working again with the athletic director and CCYB and again, following up with Charlie to see, are we at 42? Maybe we're at 44 and not 46. So we're gonna really drill down into what that means and then work on what that also then relates to for the sidelines. What we know from the vote is that our maximum dimension in the long direction is 104. And I say this because the MIAA is 84 feet, that is fixed. MIAA regulations say that they're looking for a run out that is a minimum of 3 feet and a recommended 10 feet. So 84 plus 10 feet on either side is 104. So that is your maximum dimension. And that is why in the 9,776 overall dimension, we are at that 104 max. Another variable again on the runouts is for the cross courts, there's really no regulation for what that run out is on a cross court. To date, we've had consensus that there would be 8 foot on the run out. And so assuming 8 feet and then adding the 4 foot required for the fully collapsed bleachers, which the bleachers are again designed for viewing the main court, we have a total of 94. So really your maximum overall dimensions are going to be 94 by 104, which is why we're really landing at that 9776. But again, I know that there's wiggle room and there's conversations to be had if that can go to 6 feet or if this can go less than 10 feet. MIA does say that if you go as low as 3 feet, for example, then you're looking to have padding on walls. You need to add additional striping because that run out is for safety. And they need to make sure that, you know, if you do not have that full 10 feet, which they consider the recommended run out, then they're asking for you to make provisions for safety because the runner may not be able to slow down in that distance and should have additional measures there. So I just wanted to throw up this schematic so that everybody could kind of visualize what we're working with here in terms of ranges, and let you know that these follow-ups are already scheduled and in process to be concluded by the time we come back to you on June 24th to present the updated floor plan. So we're really hoping to have consensus on this layout between now and June 24th. And then on the softer side of things that we haven't been talking about, you know, when this gets laid out, there are other things that are going to come into play, like the door swings for getting into the gym. You know, this doesn't, if you go down to a 3-foot run out in some areas and you have a door swinging in, then you know, that kind of can change your use and perception of the space. So it'll be really helpful to get some of these parameters refined, put it into the building floor plan layout, be able to show you some of those hypothetical door locations and swings, and then get your feedback on June 24th. So
do we have, do I have a copy of that diagram in your package? Is that in the slides?
No, that was just developed between our materials and today. So that'll be in what we distribute right after this meeting.
That would be great if we got it right after this meeting. Thank you.
Yep.
Hey, and Kristen, I would say just in respect of the vote that we took, that, you know, when discussing the size of the basketball courts, that I think the key thing to get sorted is what is the runouts at the end of the MIA court that we need to have. And then the width of the cross courts is just a consequence of that. I don't think that we should be having discussions really about, okay, how wide do we want the cross courts to be? The whole point of the vote that we took was design for the length of the MIA court and then fit the width that you can possibly do. And I don't know what that is, you know, within there. And, you know, it's probably going to be above 42, but it's probably not going to be 50, you know. And it might be something in between, and I don't know where it falls, but I just think that, you know, rather than get into big debates about how wide we need those cross courts to be, it's really supposed to be a derivative of whatever happens with the length of the MIA courts. And I realize that that's hard because there's some latitude there, but I just hope we can just focus on the MIA requirement. And that was the idea here, and get away from debates about the width of the cross courts.
that is exactly what we're doing. Yeah.
And I just add one other point of clarification here. The MIAA relies on a set of rules that come from the National Federation of High Schools. That National Federation of High Schools does not recommend 10 feet runouts. It says 10 feet would be optimal. And basically, if you study their materials, it's optimal if you can afford it. They also indicate that 3 feet is the minimum. And the materials that I put out called for 6 feet. And all of the SMMA numbers, if you will note on looking at the original SMMA recommendations, those were all for 6 feet runouts at the end of the court and 3 feet to the curtain for the practice court. So what that set of data speak to that is called most aggressive really reflects both NFHS regulations and the prior recommendations from SMMA. So, and I assume you work off the same rule book. So that's just a point of clarification about, you know, what is recommended versus what is kind of in the documentation as optional or you know, desirable if you can afford it. So that's the story on that, from what I can see.
I just want to make sure we keep the concept of safety in there with desirable, because when we're talking runoffs and space on the court, it is also a safety issue.
Yes, and 6 feet is twice what is required as the minimum. It's not the maximum, but it's twice what is required for the minimum. So I doubt there's any safety issue with something that the NFHS, you know, is recommending as a set of guidelines. If there were, they'd be in kind of big trouble, wouldn't they?
As long as there's padding on the wall. So we have to.
No, for 6 feet, you don't need padding on the wall.
So that will all be developed with, I think, the athletic director, because they are in fact the basketball court users and owner of the the space.
It's good practice to put padding on the wall at the runouts, whether you have the space or not.
Right, but it's not required as a safety issue. Yes, it is a good idea to put it on the wall, indeed.
Okay, so I think the point I wanted to return to Matt's point about the MIAA dictating and then maximizing the cross courts, which is what my recollection of the motion that was made a couple meetings ago now regarding that. So I'm in agreement that let that length dictate the 84 plus run out and then maximize the width of the cross court based on, you know, safe runouts for those, as well as, you know, a divider and whatnot. So thank you for returning to that language, Matt, because I do think that's important. Any other comments, questions for Kristen on this? No? Okay, and you'll share that diagram as a final presentation for today. Great, thank you. Did that take us through that whole agenda item, Kristen?
Yes.
Yep, great, because it was sort of combined, those two. Okay, excellent. All right, any new business?
I just want to mention quickly, oh, sorry, Stephen. Just
ahead,
mention quickly as
Heather
a reminder that our next public forum is coming up on Monday the 7th next week. So you should have all gotten the announcement. Please spread the word, send it to all your friends. It's going out through all the channels we usually do, media and social media and press releases and all the channels we have. But please send it to all of your contacts also. We hope to get a good showing Monday night.
Thank you for that, Heather. Stephen?
Yeah, just a quick update that CMLP is in the process of retaining an engineer to work on the solar component, and it's a firm that I think has worked with SMMA before, so that process will get started, I think, soon.
Excellent, that's exciting, thank you.
Congratulations.
Great. Any other new business? Okay, let's move to public comment. Am I missing anyone? Hold on, I have the chat open because Matt had to leave. Does anyone have their virtual hand? Doesn't look like it. No public comment today. Okay, last chance. All right. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Can, before we go, Kristen, next meeting, I'm not remembering off the top of my head from your schedule, but just to put it, is it the 24th?
That is correct, yep.
3 weeks, okay. Great. So just so everyone has that on their radar, and we're gonna get placeholders put into everyone's calendars for that entire schedule. Great, I would entertain a motion to adjourn then.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, let me run down the list. Stephen?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
Matt Johnson?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Justin?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Kate?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Port?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Frank? Did we lose? Oh, he's
Frank's
waving.
waving, yes.
I see you still. Chris?
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes.
Matt Root had to leave. Pat? Yes, Pat, she's waving. And I'm a yes. So thank you, everyone. And we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Everybody.
Good one.
Thank you.
Yeah. Come on Monday. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.